Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, I got some pretty crazy encounters for you. And they're pretty much from all over the place. They're from America, Ireland, Alberta, Romania, the works. So, if that sounds like something that you like, then definitely pull up a stump with me. And let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. I was out camping in the northeast, and this one particular time that I'm talking about, I ventured off the main trail to try to find a more comfy spot to set up. So, I find my spot, I eat, I poop, and then I go to bed. And in the middle of the night, something wakes me up. I figured it's some animals, but then I hear something else. It sounds like kids. I figure there must be a family camped out, but I think it's kinda screwed up that a kid would be on their own in the middle of the night, away from their parents' sight, so I get up. I follow the sounds of the kid, maybe 50 meters from camp, through the wood and brush. The kid is hiding beneath the brush, I can hear them. And then I get around it, and there's no kid. I hear this loud animal snort behind me, and then branches breaking, and something on two legs tearing ass off to the right. I couldn't see anything. I was spooked, but I realized that probably it was some animal and I could be hearing it wrong because I got startled and I'm disoriented. I get spooked again though when I realized that, again, there was no kid. So I walk back to my tent, and I'm a few steps from there when I realize that there are these huge claw marks. I'm talking like 3 claws that were an inch apart on some of the closest trees to my tent. They were just above head height, and I'm 6'1". I hide in the tent with my multi-tool. Nothing happens for the rest of the night, especially me sleeping. I leave as soon as it's light out. I stop at the very first local bar that I can find for immediate day drinking. The old man at the bar is Mexican, and he says, "You okay, son?" I tell him that I was camping, and I got no sleep. He said, "Oh, why is that?" And I tell him what happened. He gets a serious face, and he says, "My people tell legends of things in the forest, but this is strange. They don't usually bother people. I'm telling you, don't go out into the woods without protection. I know I don't, 'cause you never know what's out there." For a few months when I was a kid, I would stay with my grandpa, and he decides to make me do some manly things to put some hair in my chest and to show me what being a man's all about. One of the stuff we do is one morning we go to pull some weeds to sell to the nurseries. We go out fishing for dinner, and he teaches me the different types of trees in the area and how to gut a fish. Now, we're out by dawn, and we load into his pickup. He brings his shotgun, 'cause America. We drive out into the mountains for a while. The area goes from clear to impossibly thick with fog in moments. My grandpa says, "Aw, damn, keep your ass inside, son." He leaves the truck with his shotgun in hand, and he says, "Get your tree-hugging ass out of here, you damn idiot," and he fires the shotgun at something that I couldn't see through the fog. He gets back in the truck and says nothing. He pops open a bottle of root beer and hands it to me, and then one for himself. The fog disappears by the time we finish our drinks. He just keeps driving like nothing happened. Rural Alabama is such a different sort of place. I'm from Alberta, Canada, and I live way out in the boonies, and I've never seen like a cryptid or anything personally, but I think I may have encountered one last summer. I was out camping with friends, and there was a shitload of booze, and everyone was drunk as hell. Some I'm drinking a little more, some drinking a lot less. Just like all these kind of experiences start. It's getting late, and I realize that I haven't gone to the bathroom since we set up camp. So I go a ways into the forest. I'm thinking like 20 feet or so, because I don't like to pee when I'm being watched. So I'm standing there doing my business, and then I hear whispering from a few feet in front of me. I try to look around, but I don't really see a whole lot. So I just finish my business, and I turn around and I start heading back. And then something smells. Like really smells. And I don't mean your typical smell. I mean like I checked my shoe to see if I stepped in something. It was really rancid. And then I realized that I couldn't hear anything. Not that there wasn't any noise, I just couldn't hear it. Like I could see my friends talking, but I couldn't hear them. And again, I wasn't super far away, I could just hear them a second ago. Then I realized again that I haven't moved a muscle in 30 seconds. I've been standing still and just kind of in a trance. So I snap out of it and I jet back to my friends. I pretend nothing happened and then I go back to the party. The rest of the night, though, I kept seeing stuff darting in and out of the trees at the corner of my eye. Something would peek behind a tree or crawl along in the darkness. The next morning, though, we pack our stuff and we leave. Nothing paranormal happened since. I don't know. What do you guys think it was? So back when I was a teenager, I was camping out in the woods with my stepdad and his best friend. The fire begins dying out, so we need to get more firewood. My stepdad stays at the camp while me and his friend go look. We walk down this steep hill that's congested with brush. We can barely see the light from the withering fire. We come to this clearing where people were making camp earlier. We find a bottle of fire fluid, or whatever you call it, and then the 2 million candle power flashlight that we have begins to dim. And this gives me the heebie-jeebies right off the bat. The flashlight is pretty much done. We're hitting it, trying to get some use out of it. Suddenly, we hear twigs cracking in the opposite direction. I say, "Joe?" And he says, "Yes," from the opposite side of the branches. I ask him to shine the light over to where the twig snaps were, and then he yells, "What the F is that?" There's a large humanoid figure with reddish eyes that's very close to us. I yell, "Joe, let's get the hell out of here." Joe takes off and I'm right behind him. We're running up the hill. The campfire is nearly dead. We can still hear whatever that thing was coming behind us. It's definitely not human. I take out the lighter and the lighter fluid, and I squirt it where I saw some ashes, and there's a big woof kind of noise. This fireball almost reaches the tree line, and I'm just crapping my pants. I look around, and there's nothing. I dive into my tent, and then after an hour, I seem to eventually pass out or something. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of noises outside the tent. I was hoping it was just a skunk, and I was right this time. It hadn't sprayed yet, so I didn't notice it sooner. So I get more firewood, and then I walk back down the hill to that creepy encounter. The flashlight's working fine now. I see these weird prints in the direction of the thickest part of the forest. I follow them for about 12 steps, and then I nope out because the space between the prints widened by about 5 feet. Whatever that thing was, it was super tall and super fast. Lesson learned: stack up on firewood before nighttime. I have no clue what it was, but it was so close to us that I heard it breathing. So I live in a rural area, and there's no abandoned buildings left to explore because all the old houses and barns got tore down to make room for more farming. So I do what anybody else does, and I start to explore deep in the woods. I get my gear and my Lee Enfield ready, and I head out. I drive to a forest that's pretty far from town. I don't exactly know how far. And then after that, I hike a while into these unexplored woods. And suddenly, as I'm walking, I hear leaves crunching behind me. And I think, oh great, there's a cougar behind me. So I'm trying to keep my eyes peeled, trying to see a cougar before I get pounced on it. So I'm swiveling around, and I don't see anything. And I begin to think that I'm just being paranoid due to me being in a new area, not quite knowing the trails and everything. So I continue hiking along, and the whole time I get that oh so great being watched feeling. The hair on my neck begins to perk up, and I get a sudden feeling of dread as I enter this little area. Now when I say this, I mean like I was terrified for no reason at all. My gut felt like I was on a roller coaster, and it dropped so much I was shaking from adrenaline. I did a quick 360 scan of my surroundings. Nothing. Literally nothing. And then there's no sounds, and there's no birds or wind rustling or nothing. It's like a vacuum, and I'm mildly freaking out. I make sure that I have a ram chambered, and I continue on, just wanting to get out of the area. It starts to get to dusk, so I have to make camp. I find this little clearing, and there's still no sounds in the area, not even crickets. It's like somebody hit the mute button, like I said. So I string out my canvas, and I made myself a fire. I had my rifle leaned up in a ready position, but at this point, the earlier fear was not strong anymore, and I was beginning to feel like I was okay. So I sat there by the fire, and I started to read my copy of With the Old Breed, a great book by the way, and I get immersed in the tales of World War II and lose my awareness. Then, the dread hits me again. It hit me so hard that I threw up all over my rifle and clothes. I couldn't move or breathe. Then, I hear a young girl's voice, like right in my ear, and she's singing in a playful tone. For some reason, my body stops listening to me. I can't do anything. I'm frozen like a deer. There's tears streaming down my face. The voice is just giggling and singing. Then, it disappears. Suddenly, all the sound came rushing back. Crickets, distant coyotes, crunching leaves and everything. I was just sitting there, covered in vomit, still not being able to move. I sat there until morning, when it seemed that whatever had happened wore off, and I was able to stand up, and I just gathered my stuff up, and I tried to make the hike back. I ended up forgetting some of the stuff I left by the fire, but I just wanted to get the hell out of there. Every gust of wind that came on the way back gave me the shivers. When I got back to my car, I just hopped in and drove home as fast as I could. I don't know what happened to me, or why I wasn't able to move, but I've never been in that part of the forest again. So my granddad was Romanian, and during World War II, just after Romania switched sides, he joined. His platoon is assigned to sweep a sector of forested area in the eastern Carpathians for rumored Iron Legion hideouts. This was after the Nazi regime was overthrown. Grandpa was a grade A scout back then, always taking point during patrols. He was an outdoorsman, survivalist, and huntsman. There was no radios for them back then, so they used voice signals. They would chirp or make animal sounds in some kind of pattern to relay basic info. They were sweeping up one of the last sectors that was assigned to his platoon, It was a cold October morning. There was a dense blanket of fog covering the area. He was packing his crappy Soviet gun, wearing his heavy battle dress uniform. He was trying not to freeze his balls off while waiting for the rest of his squad to catch up to him. It's early morning. The sun is barely rising. The sun rays are still too weak to pierce the fog curtain. The forest is still. There's no sound of his approaching squad yet. This is fairly normal, he figures. He's been ranging 3 to 4 kilometers ahead, and the rest of the squad might have trouble following his trail markers. He whistles a couple of signals, hoping to catch the ear of his squad mates. Everything is still for a couple seconds. Then, he hears a reply coming back from the mist. A sharp whistle. The sound seems a bit muffled, and the direction is off, but he writes it off as the squad might be approaching from a different direction. About 10 minutes go by, yet he still can't make out any sounds of his approaching squad mates. At this point he starts feeling a little bit anxious. They had no trouble so far. There was no sightings of any hostiles or anything like that. Yet his instincts are telling him something's off. 2 more signals make him come to attention. The sound is coming from a completely different direction now, and it seems to originate from a position closer to him. He sends out a challenge phrase, but there's no reply. At this point, he switches the safety off and hunkers down behind the roots of a gnarly oak. The signal comes from the south now. More whistles. Then from the north, the east, and then the west. There's whistling all around, each signal starting off as another one ends. He is obviously shitting bricks at this point, thinking that he's surrounded by some hostiles. He wonders why they haven't opened fire on him, and he wonders where is his squad. The whistling stops as abruptly as it started. He's in a cold sweat at this point. He sees movement in his peripheral vision. About 10 meters away, there's a silhouette. Something is peeking out from behind a tree. There's thick fog. It's barely visible. He freezes. The feeling of dread and primal terror, as he describes it, overcomes him. He feels like he should run off screaming into the mist, hoping to find his squad. A scratching noise can be heard from behind the tree where the thing is peeking at him. He's trembling, just sitting there, unable to move or say anything, as whatever was hiding behind the tree just is staring him down. He snaps, and he opens fire. The huge silhouette just vanishes behind a tree, and more whistling can be heard. Grandpa runs off in the opposite direction. He's just noping at this point. He runs through the fog, screaming like a madman. He nearly gets shot as he runs into his squad mates after 10 minutes. They asked him where the hell he was because they heard his signals from all over, in patterns that didn't make any sense. He tells them that it wasn't him, and that he had encountered hostiles, the same thing. His squad is very unnerved by this, so they decide to report back to camp. They got back to camp, reorganized, and redeployed with bigger numbers in the area, but they didn't find anything further. He never went scouting that far ahead again, though. To this day, Grandpa doesn't understand what the hell he saw out there, or what the hell happened. So I live in Ireland, and we have our own nature of spooky stuff going on here. I headed down to the country with 4 of my friends to a house that this one dude's granddad's brother's friend owned or something, I don't remember. But I do know that it was in the absolute arsehole of nowhere. Just to get to it, you have to find this really crappy road on this crappy farm between a bush and a wall and force your way down like it was the Amazon jungle or something. So we spend 3 or 4 days there drinking and doing dumb stuff that teenagers do with a free house. So we're on day 5, and we're bored and we're hungover. We're wandering about the surrounding area of the house, the fields, and the hills, and it's just forest as far as you can see. There's sweet nothing out there. Suddenly, though, the generator dies. And I mean dies, as in super useless, broken forever kind of thing. The thing was probably from the 50s or something, so it was bound to die one day. We take this opportunity to do some spooky outdoor stuff. We're going home the next night anyways. We light this really crappy busted up barbecue, and we eat all the sausages from the fridge because they'd go bad otherwise. Duh. So after all that, we screw around some more, and then we go to bed. And then, at about 3 a.m., I wake up to go to the bathroom. I stumble about in the dark using my phone as a light, so I'm doing my business when I hear a bark outside, like a big chunky wolfhound or a dog bark. Okay, that's weird. I figure that maybe a farmer has a collie and it's chasing a lost sheep or something. That happens pretty often. But then I sit there for a second. It's 3 a.m. and it's absolutely pissing rain outside. That bark would not come from a collie. There's no sheep farmers nearby anyways. I go downstairs to see if I can see something. Darkness. I decide to forget about it. I go back to bed. I wake up again later to a loud metal thud outside. My friend David also heard it. We come to the conclusion that the weather knocked over the barbecue. We shuffle downstairs to check anyways. The barbecue is indeed knocked over, but it's also torn to shreds. Like thick pieces of metal, like a chunky fence or something, just pulled apart. We both are a little weirded out, like what the hell. He tries to go outside to check it. I tell him, basically, I can't let you do that, Dave. Dave is obviously easily convinced not to go outside. We go back upstairs. The metal clanking continues. We figure it's just the barbecue, or what remains of it, rolling in the wind. I try to sleep, and I obviously cannot. The rain and the wind are deafening now. I start talking to Dave. He's also wide awake. We're trying to figure out what happened to our barbecue. We joke about maybe an escaped exotic animal. Our friend James walks into the room without knocking and says that he's been awake since 2 a.m., hearing weird stuff all night. We say that we have too, but we ask him why he waited till now to tell us. We hover around the room, bored and honestly a little scared. We start hearing a dull thunk outside. It sounds like somebody is banging on plywood. We sheepishly walk downstairs. David and James go to the kitchen, and I, having shoes on, am volunteered to walk outside in my raincoat. And it's absolutely pouring rain still. I walk to the barbecue, which is now up against the wall. I have a really short wander around the house, and I walk back in. Dave and James are freaking out in the kitchen. They say, "Did you not effing see that?" I say, "No, what's out there?" They describe to me this beige-haired dog bear that was casually walking through one of the bushes surrounding the house. I'm absolutely convinced that they are just screwing with me. I say, "Right lads, if you're so sure, let's go find it." I end up basically having to drag the both of them out there in the night. My fourth friend is just out cold, asleep, very heavy sleeper. They insist on bringing kitchen knives, and I say, "Alright, go for it." I angrily march them off into the woods and the fields to find it. I've never been so livid and determined in my life. It's like 4:30 a.m. and they want to start pulling all this stuff. And then we smell the disgusting smell of cow poop and meat as we walk out. It's the country, so we don't think a whole lot of it. The rain begins to ease off at this point, but it's still utterly blackness except for our phone lights. The next thing that happened is the bane of my nightmares, and I still think about it constantly. We wander a shortish distance into the forested area. It's so dark, and our eyes are slow to adjust. It's freezing cold, and I am wandering in the rain and mud, thinking, what the hell is my life? Dave suddenly yelps and starts bolting back to the house. James follows. I am apparently dumb. I just stand there. I turn slowly to the right. Standing over the body of what I think was once a dog is this 6-ish foot tall, beige-skinned, short-haired, blood and rain-drenched literal Dogman. It smells like what wet dog would smell like after 40 years of fermenting. I have no ability to move or do anything but stare, my mouth open. I am frozen entirely. I don't know why I didn't run. Dave said he was screaming for me to come back to the house, but I don't even remember hearing it. It rears up and makes a noise I've only ever been able to equate to the noise that Kurt Cobain makes at the start of the song Lounge Act, except it's opening its mouth and kind of shaking as if it's trying to scream. I still have no ability to move. It looks like what I can only describe as confused about my presence. It takes a single movement forwards, and my brain reminds me that I have legs, and I turned and ran so fast I smashed my foot into a rock and broke my toe, and I didn't even notice until later when I was indoors. We sit there in dead silence, soaking wet. The last friend, Liam, comes down and looks at us. He says, "Where the hell were you guys and what were you doing?" I give him the summary, the lowdown of the events that happened, and shortly after that, we decided that it was just time to go home. We're not staying the night. We just start shoving stuff into bags. It's so dark in the cabin, since there's no power, that we end up forgetting most of our stuff. We stand at the front door for what feels like forever without going outside to the car, too scared. We all agreed to bolt at the same time. We didn't even close the door. We drive off and arrive home at like 8 a.m., drenched and exhausted, and we never told anyone for months, maybe even a year after that. Still got no idea what any of that was. My only theory, or our only theory, is that it smelled the sausages and barbecued meat and came for it, but when it was gone, tore apart the barbecue. I don't know. So, what'd you think of those stories? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. And down in the description, there is a link to a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel. And before I go too, there's a lot of people who are asking what my accent is or where I'm from. I didn't know I had an accent until people started bringing it up, but now I hear myself talk and I can definitely hear my accent. But I am from the Maritimes in Canada. They call us the have-not provinces, but anyways, I am from New Brunswick. So I guess my accent is just, I don't know, New Brunswick or Maritime, New Brunswick, I don't know. Either way, that's where I'm from. So that's how I talk, I guess. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing. And I think with that, I will see you in the next one. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for listening. Have a good one.